What if everything you've been told about being too much was a lie? Too emotional, too intense, too sensitive, too complicated. You've heard those words before, haven't you? Maybe they came from a teacher, a parent, a friend, or maybe you whispered them to yourself in moments of shame, exhaustion, or loneliness. But what if I told you you're not too much? You're just operating on a level of psychological awareness that most people never reach. Carl Jung spent his entire life studying human consciousness, and he discovered something extraordinary, a rare psychological phenomenon he called differentiated consciousness. According to Jung, fewer than 5% of people develop this. It's not a personality quirk. It's a radically advanced way of experiencing reality. These people don't skim the surface. They dive. They don't accept easy answers. They ask harder questions. They don't perform. They feel deeply. And the most tragic part? These rare souls often go through life believing something is wrong with them when, in fact, they are evidence of what Jung believed was the next stage of human psychological evolution. Let that sink in. Everything society told you to suppress your intensity, your emotional radar, your refusal to settle for superficiality isn't a flaw to be fixed. It's a signal of something rare, something necessary, something powerful. You're not broken. You're breakthrough. And today, we're going to walk straight into the psychological terrain most people avoid because that's where your truth lives. By the end of this video, you will no longer question whether you're too much. You'll understand that the world is simply too little. And Carl Jung knew, people like you are the ones who change that. If even half of what we're about to explore resonates, you're not just different. You're part of the psychological elite. Let's begin. Have you ever walked into a room and felt something was off before anyone said a word? Have you ever had a conversation where the person's words said one thing, but their eyes said everything else? That's not imagination. That's not paranoia. That's psychological radar. Carl Jung called it affect-tone complexes, emotionally charged networks in the psyche that go far beyond surface-level feelings. He discovered that certain individuals don't just experience emotion, they resonate with it. When you feel something, it moves through you like an ocean current, deep, unpredictable, impossible to ignore. You don't just get emotional, you become the emotion. It floods your system like a symphony, rich with layered meaning and unconscious depth. And society, it calls that too sensitive, too reactive, too much. But Jung didn't see it that way. He saw it as a sign of rare psychological sophistication. He wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But for you, it's not just irritation, it's insight. You don't need words to understand what's really going on. You feel the undercurrents, the tension, the subtle fracture between what someone says and what they actually mean. This isn't emotional instability. It's emotional intelligence, operating at a level most people will never develop. But here's the trap, and it's one Jung warned about repeatedly. When the world tells you to tone it down, you start believing that your depth is a defect. You try to numb it, ignore it, shrink it just to fit in. But your psyche rebels. You begin to fragment. Jung called this psychological splitting, when one part of you knows the truth, but another part tries desperately to conform. And the cost? Exhaustion, anxiety, emotional burnout, all because you've been told that your gift is a problem. Let me be clear. You are not emotionally unstable. You are emotionally attuned at a level that threatens shallow systems. You don't just walk into rooms. You read them. You don't just hear what's said. You feel what's hidden. And yes, it's heavy. Yes, it's isolating. But it's also your gift. And if you learn to wield it instead of fearing it, it becomes your greatest source of power. You were never meant to live on the surface. Your depth is your compass. Your pain is your teacher. And your emotional intensity is not an obstacle. It's the very thing that allows you to perceive truth in a world addicted to denial. You're not fragile. You're finely tuned. And in a noisy, disconnected, emotionally numb society, your ability to feel deeply isn't a flaw. It's a revolution. You don't just ask, what? You ask, why? Why do people stay in relationships that suffocate them? Why do we glorify comfort over truth? Why do entire systems thrive on inauthenticity, and why does no one question them? Your curiosity has never been casual. It's sacred. It's surgical. It cuts straight through illusion and demands something real. Carl Jung called this rare capacity the transcendent function, the psychological mechanism that allows us to reconcile opposing truths, to evolve beyond our current limitations, to hold complexity without collapsing into confusion. Most people, they don't want to see past the surface. But you were born with vision, not just to look, but to see. And what you see often makes others uncomfortable. You've noticed this, haven't you? The more clearly you articulate the cracks in the system, the more pushback you receive. You've been labeled negative, cynical, even combative, when in reality, you were simply being honest in a room built on denial. Jung believed that psychologically differentiated individuals possess something even rarer: prophetic consciousness, the ability to perceive the trajectory of things, to sense what's coming long before it arrives. It's not mystical, it's not magical, it's awareness. Hyper-developed, highly tuned, painfully precise. You don't need proof to know when something's wrong. Your nervous system already told you. You don't wait for disaster to ask the hard questions, you ask them before it's too late. But here's the paradox Jung identified. The clearer your vision becomes, the lonelier your path may get. Why? Because your questions threaten comfort. They unravel the psychological scaffolding people rely on to feel safe, even if it's a lie. And so you begin to carry the burden of insight, not because you want to, but because you have to. Because something inside you refuses to play along with the charade. You are not cynical. You are not broken. You are not difficult. You are awake. And that awakening, it comes with responsibility. Jung warned that those who see further must not fall into superiority. That gift must be matched with humility, with discernment, with the understanding that not everyone is ready to go where you've already been. But here's the truth. Your sacred curiosity, it's not random. It's evolutionary. And your questions, the ones that alienated you, the ones that made you doubt yourself, they're not a flaw. They're the reason consciousness expands. Keep asking, keep seeing, keep unsettling the illusions, because the world needs your vision more than ever. The most terrifying thing, Jung once said, is to accept oneself completely. But somehow, you've done it. Not because it was easy, not because someone showed you how, but because life gave you no other choice. Maybe it was the betrayal that cracked your trust, the abandonment that shattered your illusion of safety. The moment you realized that depending on others for your worth was psychological quicksand. So you stood up, alone, and you built yourself from the ground up. Jung called this rare process individuation, the lifelong journey of integrating all parts of the self into a unified whole. Not the persona you present to the world, not the roles you were told to play, but the real you, shadow and light, vulnerable and powerful, whole. This isn't independence as rebellion. It's independence as rebirth. And while others may view your solitude as a sign of isolation, you know better. Your solitude is sanctuary. It's where you return to remember who you are. It's where the noise of conformity dies and the voice of truth becomes audible again. But make no mistake, the path to this kind of wholeness is brutal. Most never reach it. Why? Because individuation requires facing the shadow, the repressed, rejected parts of ourselves that society taught us to hide. Our anger, our desires, our fears, our brilliance. And yet, you face them. Maybe not all at once, maybe not without scars, but you looked. And that looking changed everything. Jung noted that psychologically rare individuals tend to reach individuation earlier in life, usually through adversity. And while the world may see your self-reliance as cold or unapproachable, what they don't realize is that it was earned. This is why you don't seek relationships from desperation. You seek them from choice. You're not looking to be saved. You're looking to grow side by side with someone who's also done their inner work. But Jung also warned, the more whole you become, the more you attract both extremes. Those who want to possess your light, and those who are threatened by it. Understanding this polarity is the key to protecting your energy and your heart. In relationships, rare individuals often encounter three types. The light seeker, who is drawn to your energy but hasn't done their own shadow work. They crave your depth, but drain you in the process. The light dimmer, who feels threatened by your authenticity and tries to make you smaller, quieter. And the light matcher, the rarest of all. The one who can meet you where you are without needing to consume you or contain you. Jung understood this better than most. Wholeness attracts extremes. Discernment protects it. You've done what most people avoid for a lifetime. You've become yourself. That's not independence. That's psychological sovereignty. And it's one of the rarest forms of power on the planet. You don't just observe people. You read them. You feel what's unsaid. You notice the shift in energy when someone walks into a room. You hear the tremble in a "I'm fine" and know they're anything but. Carl Jung was one of the first to recognize this as more than just instinct. He called it intuition, perception via the unconscious, that brings forth ideas, images, and possibilities not available to conscious reasoning. It's a legitimate psychological function, and for people like you, it's as real as sight or sound. You don't need to be told what's wrong. You feel it. This is not imagination. It's not sensitivity gone wild. It's how your psyche is wired to perceive the world beneath the world. Jung also described this ability as active imagination, a capacity to interact with unconscious material in symbolic, emotionally resonant ways. Your nervous system doesn't just process information, it absorbs emotional data most people never notice. But here's the burden. If you don't understand this gift, it will destroy you. Because what happens when you can't turn it off? What happens when you're constantly absorbing the anxiety, anger, pain, and unprocessed trauma of everyone around you? You become what Jung called the unconscious therapist. You regulate every conversation. You hold space for emotional chaos. You pick up the pieces others refuse to admit are broken. And eventually, you forget to check in with yourself. You become so externally focused, scanning, soothing, sensing that your own needs vanish. And that, Jung warned, is when intuition becomes a curse. This is why boundaries aren't optional for you, they're survival. If you don't set them, you'll drown in emotions that aren't yours. If you don't protect your energy, you'll burn out while trying to light up the world. Psychological sensitivity at this level requires what Jung called psychological boundaries, the ability to sense without absorbing, to witness without taking ownership, to feel deeply without dissolving in the process. Elaine Aron's research on highly sensitive people, HSPs, confirms what Jung already knew. Around 20% of the population has nervous systems that process information more deeply. But what Jung discovered went even further. A rarer group whose entire psychological architecture is built for depth, resonance, and intuitive awareness. That's you. Not everyone will understand your depth. Most won't even notice it. But the ones who do, they will feel seen, not just heard, but witnessed in a way they've never experienced before. That's your power, but only if you learn to protect it. Your gift is real, but so is the cost. And your work now is not to stop caring. It's to learn who's worthy of your care in the first place. You've tried to fit in, tried to play the role, smile at the right time, say what people want to hear. But no matter how much you perform, it always comes back. That feeling, that emptiness, the sense that none of this is real. Carl Jung saw this pattern over and over again in rare personalities. He observed that some individuals are psychologically incapable of living inauthentic lives, not because they're rebellious, but because their very psyche demands truth. You don't choose meaning over popularity. You don't prefer depth over surface. You are wired for it. And when you betray that wiring, something inside you rebels. Jung called this the emergence of neurotic symptoms, anxiety, depression, existential dread. Not because you're broken, but because you've abandoned your inner alignment. Maybe you've tried to follow the script, chase success, seek approval, play small, but the applause felt hollow. The achievements meaningless, the relationships shallow, because none of it matched you. You were never built for performance. You were built for alignment. And when you finally stop apologizing for your intensity, your refusal to fake it, you become something far more dangerous than misunderstood. You become free. Jung discovered that meaning-driven individuals serve as what he called evolutionary catalysts. They don't just live differently, they force others to examine why they're not. Every time you refuse shallow validation, every time you question a false connection, every time you live from values instead of fear, you shake the foundations of those still living asleep. It's no wonder you've been told to tone it down. It's no wonder you've been criticized for being too much. Because your authenticity doesn't just disrupt the room, it exposes the lies in it. But here's the responsibility, and Jung was clear about this. You cannot weaponize your depth. You cannot let your insight mutate into judgment or ego. Because your role isn't to dominate, it's to illuminate. Your craving for meaning is not a liability, it's a signal. And the reason the world feels heavy sometimes is because your soul remembers what lightness is supposed to feel like. Don't let anyone convince you that depth is a weakness. It's the blueprint for evolution. You are not just here to survive. You're here to raise the standard of what human experience can be. You're not just a seeker of meaning. You're a builder of it. And your refusal to settle for less. That's not selfish. That's sacred. There's a grief no one talks about. The grief of growing beyond who you used to be. It doesn't come with funerals or goodbyes, but it hurts. Because with every step into your truth, something gets left behind. Carl Jung called this psychological death and rebirth, the process of shedding the false layers, the conditioned roles, the expectations you once confused for your identity. And it's not a gentle transformation. It feels like breaking, like being exiled from your old life, like walking through the world with no map, no guide, and no one who understands what you're becoming. This is what Jung meant by the dark night of the soul. Not ordinary loneliness, but a bone-deep ache of existential isolation. Not because you're lost, but because you're no longer who you were, and not yet who you're becoming. You've probably felt it. The friendships that once sustained you now feel hollow. The conversations that used to comfort now leave you empty. The places that once felt like home now feel too small. And people don't always understand. They remember the version of you who made herself easy to digest. The one who smiled on cue, who shrank to fit, who played along. They want that version back, but you can't go back. Because once you've tasted truth, falsehood becomes unbearable. Once you've seen behind the curtain of social conditioning, you can't pretend the stage is real. And yes, it's painful. Yes, it's lonely. Yes, it feels like losing everything. But Jung discovered something extraordinary. Those who survive this rebirth attract something even rarer. Resonance. Not attention, not followers, not validation, but real, soul-deep connection. The kind that doesn't ask you to perform. The kind that sees your evolution not as a threat, but as an invitation. When you stop shrinking, the right people stop running. When you stop apologizing for your depth, the right people stop fearing it. Because psychological growth isn't about leaving others behind. It's about finally making space for those who can meet you. And in that space, you stop being lonely. You start being known. There's something about you, a stillness, a gravity, an unspoken safety. People feel it when they're around you, even if they can't explain it. They talk more. They soften. They cry, without knowing why. Carl Jung called this rare gift the ability to hold psychological space, to create an atmosphere where truth can surface without shame, where people feel seen without being fixed. It's not something you do. It's something you are. Your presence alone creates transformation, not because you force change, but because your authenticity invites it. You don't interrupt. You witness. You don't jump to conclusions. You listen between the lines. You don't offer quick fixes. You offer the most radical thing a person can experience. The feeling of being fully, completely understood. And that is healing. But here's what Jung observed, and what most people with this gift don't realize until it's too late. The deeper your presence, the more others unconsciously ask you to carry what they refuse to feel. You become the emotional anchor, the safe harbor, the unpaid therapist. And somewhere along the way, you disappear. Because you've held so much for others, You forgot to hold space for yourself. This is what Jung termed the helper syndrome, a pattern of unconscious self-sacrifice that feels noble but slowly erodes your identity. And it doesn't just exhaust you, it hides you. Because when you're constantly supporting others, no one thinks to ask how you're doing. But here's the truth. Your presence is medicine. But even medicine has dosage limits. You are not here to be consumed. You are here to be reciprocated. The work isn't to stop caring. It's to learn discernment, to know who deserves access to your emotional presence and who doesn't. Because the ones who truly value your energy, they won't drain it, they'll match it. You are not a resource. You are a relationship, and you deserve to be held just as deeply as you hold others. There's something inside you that's hard to explain, a quiet knowing, a restless ache, a sense that you're meant for something even if you can't name it yet. It's not ambition. It's not ego. It's not even desire. It's calling. Carl Jung understood this feeling intimately. He called it the transcendent function, a push from the unconscious urging you toward wholeness. You've probably felt it in strange ways, a resistance to ordinary goals, a discomfort with the conventional path, a sense that going through the motions is not just boring, it's soul-killing, and people may not get it. They might say you're scattered, delusional, unrealistic, but Jung would say the opposite. You are experiencing what he called creative potential seeking expression. That undefined urgency in your chest isn't confusion. It's life force asking for alignment. But here's the danger. Jung warned that without shadow integration, this archetypal calling can mutate. It becomes inflated, distorted, weaponized. That's when rare individuals fall into the three psychological shadows Jung identified. The superiority complex, believing your depth makes you better than others. The messianic complex, believing it's your job to fix or awaken the world. The martyrdom complex, believing your suffering is the price you must pay for being rare. These are traps, and they don't honor your gift, they corrupt it. Because your calling isn't just personal, it's transpersonal. It's not about saving the world. It's about serving consciousness itself through your alignment, your authenticity, your evolution. You are not meant to prove your worth. You are meant to embody it. Not everyone will understand this journey. Some will mock it. Some will fear it. Some will try to silence it. But you are not designed for silence. And that urgency inside you, it's the voice of something ancient, something evolutionary, asking you to become fully, unapologetically, undeniably you. Listen to it. It may not give you a map, but it is your compass. Let's take a breath. Because if you've resonated with what we've explored today, even halfway, you're not just different. You're part of what Carl Jung called the leading edge of human consciousness. You are not too sensitive. You are not too intense. You are not too much. You are exactly what the world needs to remember how to feel again. To recap, your emotional depth? Not instability, but emotional sophistication. Your sacred curiosity? Not a flaw, but the engine of consciousness. Your independence? Not isolation, but psychological sovereignty. Your intuitive radar? Not paranoia, but perception via the unconscious. Your craving for meaning? Not impractical, but essential. Your outgrowing of people and places? Not betrayal, but evolution. Your presence? Not passive, but transformative. Your undefined purpose? Not confusion, but a sacred calling in progress. Your shadow? Not something to eliminate, but something to integrate. Your relationships? Not random, but patterns of energy. The light seeker, the light dimmer, and the rarest of all, the light matcher. You are not broken. You are breakthrough. And yes, the path is lonely. Yes, it demands courage. Yes, it often means walking where few have walked. But Jung believed that people like you are the bridges between the unconscious and the conscious, between what humanity has been and what it could become. Your work is not to become less. Your work is to become you, completely, unapologetically, brilliantly. And when you do, you don't just change your life, you change what it means to be human. If this spoke to something in you, comment below. I am psychologically rare and proud of it. Share this with someone who's always been told they're too much. And remember, you're not too much. The world is too little. And people like you are the ones who change that.